Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a stroll and deliver an episode to you while I walk around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a noisy construction day here in suburban Chicago as I head out for a walk it's kind of gloomy today. It's been very nice weather lately, so temperatures in the mid-70s Fahrenheit during the day, though in the mornings it's still quite brisk. I'm wearing a hat and gloves, for instance. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little overkill, but right now I feel quite comfy. Well, I hope that you have been having a pleasant gaming experience lately. I've been getting a lot of games in. My daughter and I have played a number of games that I've enjoyed. We played a round of Orleans earlier this week that was really fun. Although she forgot how important it was to go around the map and build trading houses, so I did quite a bit of that, and I kind of cleaned up on the old points there. But next time she'll clobber me, I'm sure. Well, I realized I had not done a Message from the Deep episode for a while, so that's what we're going to do today, Message from the Deep. And the subject of today's Message from the Deep is going to be Mottainai. So Mottainai is a game that has been in my top 50 at least twice. It definitely was in there in 2017. I don't think it was in there in 2015. I don't think I'd played it yet. But it's a game I've played off and on for years, and I recently gotten back into it. I had it on my top 10, I think, in 2017, or in my 10 for 10 in 2017, and I hadn't finished. But I have now finished and taught it to a few more people, so I'm getting a little bit better at teaching it, although still not great. So what I thought I would do today is talk about what Mottainai is, how it plays, a little bit anyway, and why I like it so much, or what I've learned from playing it as much as I have. I think I have 15 plays total now in my experience, so certainly not a neophyte, and I think deep enough in that I can talk about it in a bit. So to begin with, theme. Mottainai, published by Asmadi Games, not Asmodee, Asmadi, A-S-M-A-D-I, and designed by Carl Chudyk, is a multi-use card game with very swingy individual powers, really fast play. Once you know how to play, it's a 15 or 20 minute game usually, and lots of interesting choices to make every turn. I was looking around online after the last time I played it with somebody. The deluxe edition is $80, which is way too much to pay for it, because they have Mottainai Mini, which is the 54 main cards of the game, and basically the deluxe edition is just 2 of those. So you can get Mottainai Mini for $20 or something on Amazon right now, which is a fine price for that. You get a deck of cards, then you can play 2 or 3 players, which is the way I usually play. Or if you buy 2 copies, then you can play 4 to 5 players. That's, if you're interested in this, that's how I would recommend it. The theme of Mottainai is, strangely, that you are a Buddhist monk running a monastery gift shop. The theme is kind of nonsensical and frankly doesn't have a lot to do with what's going on. It just provides a little bit of context for the many varied terms having in the game. The real challenge with Mottainai has to do with the fact that it has multi-use cards that change in function as you move them around the table. So for instance, when you play a card in Mottainai, when you get a card, it has 5 functions. It could be a work. A work is the goal of the game. You're trying to make you could make up to 9 of them if you and your opponent were both playing really slow. But generally, you're going to make somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 if you win. 7 maybe. And the works are put around the board. You put works on the left and the right side. So you have a player mat in front of you, and you put the works on the left or right side of the player mat in your galleries. If you put them on the left side, they cover your helpers. I don't know if you can hear the air quotes I'm trying to insert there around the words. If you put them on the right side, they cover your sails. But each work also has a special power, many of which feel like they're game-breaking. The special powers are easier or harder to get depending on how hard the work is to make, and they do a variety of different things that change the game dramatically. For instance, in the last game I played, one of the works that my opponent made prevented me from doing a bunch of actions at any time, for example. I've had other works where it'll amplify the points significantly or give you a whole bunch of extra points, there are many of them in the game. When you read them, you say, wait, that's not fair. But that's kind of the point of the game. So every card could be a work. But there are a number of other things you could do with the cards as well. Every card is also a material. It can be clay, paper, cloth, stone, or metal. Every work could also be a task. And those tasks are associated with the materials. So every paper work is also a clerk task. Every cloth work is also a tailor task. Every clay work is a potter task. Every metal work is a smith task. And every stone work is a monk task. So you have all these things you can do. Then you also can use those cards to be, in that same order again, a clerk, or you can have them be helpers to augment your clerk tasks, your tailor tasks, and so on. Or they can be sales of those types. So you can use them in a variety of different ways. So the way the game plays is that you get to take the same action your opponent took the previous turn, and then you take one of your actions. So you have cards in hand. First thing you do is you forfeit a card to the middle of the table where your opponent, where it becomes materials, and then you play a card, and then you do whatever task your opponent played the last turn, then you do your task. And there's a bunch of other stuff that happens there. And if I try to teach you it over the podcast, not only will you get bored and turn off the podcast, you won't understand anything more about the game. It's definitely a game where you learn to play it by playing it. I mean, generally you have to be explained the way that things move around, and then you play a game, and while you're playing it, the person teaching you helps you understand why the things move around they do and how they interact. It's really the only way I've found to teach it well. And I can't say that I teach it that well, except that last time I taught it, the person then beat me. It's true of two of the last games. Maybe I'm just bad at it. Anyway, so the idea of the Message from the Deep episode is for me to give a few thoughts about a game that I've played a lot. And for me, a lot is anything over 10 plays probably. Would give me the feeling that I have enough of a sense of the game that I can give deep feedback on it, as opposed to the shooting from the hip episodes where it's sort of first impressions. So I have 6 points to make about Mottainai, what makes me like it or not like it. So the first thing is multi-use cards. Carl Chudyk is the designer. He came to fame for his game Glory to Rome, which was co-designed with somebody else, but people generally acknowledge that it's Carl Chudyk's design. And given his later output, it seems like that's probably true. He also did this game Mottainai, which feels very similar to Glory to Rome, I understand, although I have not played Glory to Rome. Then he did another one called Innovation, which definitely feels similar. You can see the overlap, but it is slightly different. And then he has another one called Impulse, which use the cards to make a kind of grid on the board. But again, multiple uses for each kind of card, and they kind of overlap with each other. So if you like this kind of game, you actually have a bunch of different games you can play that do a similar thing. I guess what I really like about Chudyk's games, as opposed to some other games I've played with multi-use cards, is that often the cards get used in multiple ways and they get moved around to be multiple things. As opposed to a lot of other games I've played where the cards are multi-use cards, it comes down to you have multiple choices of what you can do with the card when you get it, and then it's done. So for example, in Oh My Goods, each card could be a building or it could be a material, and that's it. Or it could be money. There's a third. It seems like there's a third thing, but once you use it for one of those, it doesn't become the other. You're sort of locked in. In Mottainai, the cards move around a lot and become different things. One of the downsides of the game is, as I've already intimated, it is tough to teach. I've taught it three times this year, and none of them went particularly smoothly. The third one went the best, but even then, it felt very rough. I kept stopping and apologizing, and I offered the person who was playing a chance to jump out if they were not feeling like I was explaining it well, and they said they thought they were getting it, and we stayed in, and they ended up really liking it, which was great. But the challenge of teaching this game is no joke. Because all the systems sort of rely on each other, it's really hard to find a place to start. That is the rough to teach. It's difficult to teach. One of the things I really like about the game is its crazy acceleration. So a lot of games, you have to build up an engine and then kind of run it really efficiently, and you have to feed your workers and that sort of thing. Mottainai gets rid of most of that. You never have to worry about, do I have enough gold to do something? I mean, you do have to manage your cards, your hand, and sometimes you do get stuck, like you draw the wrong thing. And so like there was a couple of times last time I played where I was down to one card in hand, and you're going to get 2 actions on your turn, but you always have to play 1 card out of hand if you can. And so I was having to use one of my 2 actions every round just to draw a new card so I'd have something to play, so I didn't get stuck with nothing, which can happen as well. And then you're really stuck if you get down to 0 cards. It can be very rough. So I had a couple rounds where I really needed to draw a cloth card, which would give me a tailor action, and I just couldn't, because the tailor action lets you refill your hand. So that sort of thing could happen. But on the plus side, you get these crazy accelerations where you get a card or 2, something that amplifies something else, and then pretty soon you're doing lots of actions. For example, one of the things you can do is turn a card into a helper. Well, the way the helper works is it gives you an extra action every time you take that type of action. So if I have a Potter helper and I take another Potter action, when I take that new Potter action, I get to take 2 actions. Now, if I build a work that supports that or covers that Potter helper, now I'm taking 3 actions every time I play a Potter card. And that's true if my opponent plays a Potter card as well. So it's really easy to get an incredible amount of actions toward the end of the game. You also get a strange amplification of other things as well. So, like for instance, my opponent got a thing in play that let him move cards from the one place to another pretty easily, and he built up a good engine that he ran a couple times that let him just shuffle a lot of cards around. Worked out really well for him. And so, like I said, often when you play a card, your opponent will read it and be like, wait, that doesn't seem right. That seems way too strong. But the thing is, all the cards feel way too strong, or a lot of them do. And so while you do get this kind of crazy acceleration going on in the game, everybody has access to it, so it doesn't feel bad. The second part of what makes that crazy acceleration not feel bad is that the game is short. Once you know how to play Mottainai, a game of Mottainai probably takes you 20 minutes. Now, it's not always only 20 minutes. Sometimes it's a little longer, sometimes it's a little less. But because the game is generally still short, the sort of bad luck of the draw or feeling a little irritated that your opponent got a better combo than you evaporates pretty quickly because the game didn't take too long. I feel like the longer the game is, the more irritating a bad luck draw will be. But in a short game, who cares? Added to that, the end game condition is really interesting. So the way the game ends, as soon as one person has 5 works in one of their 2 galleries, the game ends. So both players have relatively fast access to ending the game. And this makes for an interesting element as well, because part of what you're trying to do is calculate, do you think your opponent is winning or not? And the cards you have left in hand can score for you, but they won't always. And so you don't always know how many points your opponent has in hand. So there's some interesting calculus as the game reaches its climax, where you're trying to decide, do I want to end the game now or let it go one more turn, potentially giving my opponent a chance to end the game and or score a bunch more points before I get to end the game. So the crazy acceleration and the short element of the game are both really useful because you can end the game when you want to, usually without too much trouble. The last comment I would add about the game is that it's pretty. The game has a kind of papercraft look to it, so it looks like it has it was made with origami maybe. I mean, it's all paintings. It's like watercolor paintings of origami shapes of these objects that you're making. And it's lovely. It's a nice little card game. The art does what it needs to do without being distracting from the iconography, which is very good. It's plain. It's not... You don't look at the game and go like, ooh, what great graphic design. But you can understand what's going on, and it communicates pretty well. In aesthetic, it reminds me quite a bit, actually, of the redesigned, the black box edition of Glory to Rome. It has that same kind of clean, strong aesthetic look to it that I really like. So, verdict of Mottainai. Well, it's still in my top 50. I have to look again. I think it's number 17 maybe out of 50. Might be a little lower than that. But it is definitely a game that I really, really enjoy. And I love being able to play it with other people. The hardest part about it is teaching it. It is a difficult teach, and the first play usually takes an hour because between teaching people and reminding them how it works and making sure they remember all the rules and trying to explain the scoring, because the scoring's pretty complicated if you don't understand the game yet. So it's then hard to tell people how to win. So there's lots going on in the game, which makes it a difficult mind puzzle to wrap your head around. But when you're able to do so, it's a fantastic game and one of my favorites. If you're interested in trying it, there are certainly videos online that would show you how. It is available as a tabletop simulator mod. Within my ethic of, I will download onto my computer and host games on Tabletop Simulator where I own the physical game. I am happy to play Mottainai, and I'd be happy to do a teach if anybody's interested in learning it. Just reach out to me on Board Game Geek, Wombat929, and we'll see about getting a game going. As I said, I really enjoy it, and I would love to have the opportunity to play some more. So, listener, what Carl Chudyk games have you played? Have you tried Mottainai? Have you played any of the others, Glory to Rome, or Innovation, or Impulse? And what do you think of those? Pop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what you think of those games, or what feedback you have about Mottainai, or anything else that tickles your fancy or you care to share. I'd love to hear from you, and look forward to playing with you perhaps. I hope that your quarantining is going well, and that you can hear me over all the construction noise here as I wrap up the show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.